some of the whistleblowers that are out there and the information that's coming out. And that's exactly why I wanted to have you on this show tonight, because you are a straight shooter. You are the guy that's been on the inside, and now I believe is going to be part of this wave of information analysts who are going to be able to bring us up to speed on what's really going on right now.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why. Like, let me ask you, Michael. I mean, I think that look at the atmosphere. Just like you said, I'm able to get on the radio now and get on a show and start doing some interviews and coming out and being a straight shooter and giving out this info. Now, I can't think of a time other than the now where you as a lawyer would actually be on the radio discussing the information that might kind of go against the entire legal community or the information that they are trying to protect and secure away from the common citizen. So let me ask you, for instance, and one of the things is I want to bounce this off of you as a legal professional with the background to be able to answer these questions or some of this information accurately for the people who are listening. Because, I've called lawyers on the telephone just out of the blue and started asking them freedom questions about being a sovereign or being free or being a living soul. And they tell me that they all pretty much have the same kind of boilerplate response, which is, hey, that's not how it goes in the real world. And then they hang up on me. And I realize what the real world really means. The real world is actually, they're right. Some of these things I'm going to discuss don't go on in the real world because what we're being manipulated to operate in is the world of fiction. And so it took me hearing that a few times with these lawyers. We're using words of art even in their absurd defense of freedom because, they have an oath they have to uphold. So let me ask you this. And this is important because this kind of lays the groundwork for the solution that I want to talk about to build this builds the foundation for it. I talk about how the people, let's just call them the people, this group of human beings that we're communicating to, who I'm trying to communicate to help them be free, that the people are not really citizens, persons, individuals, residents, domiciled, taxpayers. We are living souls. We are souls that are having this living soul experience, this apparent physical that we're living in, whether it's digital or analog or physical or real or electric. We are souls. And so as souls, we don't fall under the jurisdiction of any other living soul in this earth domain. But yet we've got this corporation, and then I want you to, see if this is true, this corporation that's pretending to be a government that has converted living souls through contracts. They've converted living souls through actually one-sided unilateral contracts that are really all illegal, converted the living souls to citizens, persons, individuals, residents, domiciled, and taxpayers. Am I making sense with this?
Oh, you're right on. This is fascinating stuff because these are the kinds of language issues that people are not aware of. The type of subjects that you're talking about are, if you can use them correctly in a court of law.
Yeah.
As you well know, because I've read some of your great materials, you can almost challenge the actual jurisdiction of these entities who think that they have control over each individual soul, just like you're talking. And I am fascinated by that. As a 30-year legal professional, I had not been able to take advantage of some of that, but I do every once in a while. Had actually in the past run across some very crafty attorneys who knew how to work that system. So I am so interested in what you're doing and what you want to bring to the public as far as their real reality of who they are and literally how powerful each of us are.
Exactly. That's the truth, because this levels the playing field. Right now, we are not playing on a level playing field. It is not. It is by far. It is so far from a level playing field. It's not even funny. And physically, literally, like this. So here, let me explain it in more detail. And I just want you to verify this. When you go into a court, there are no real courts in America. There's only like one court. It's the World Court of Contracts that handles international contracts because of the different tariffs and the bargaining agreements between the different countries that are really companies. But what we think are courts, like magistrate courts, are really just administration centers dressed up to look like courts, and then the judges are really just administrators dressed up to look like judges. And words of art are used, and people are forcibly dragged in against their will, like in handcuffs, and forced to basically settle a contract. It's really about contract disputes, and people don't realize that there's like 4 different levels of the contract. You have summary, I believe, misdemeanor, felony, and then you got capital. And those are the different, I guess, monetary values per contract. And so when you're pulled into this courtroom or administration center, you're not even in a court, and you're not on a level playing field. Like, you're supposed to have a judge. When we play baseball and football and basketball, we're on, and the referees are right there on the level playing field. They're there on the field. It's all a flat level playing field. But in the courtroom, the continuation of evidence is broken because the judge is up in a box, the clerk of the court is up off of the playing field in a box, the jury, which should be 12 people on the flat field, is lifted up off of a box of 2 rows of 6. So there's no continuation of evidence going on in there. It's basically like a play, a stage play. And what I want all the living souls to understand is there's no reason to ever go into one of those administration buildings unless you're dragged in there forcibly against your will, because they're there just to take money from you. They're there just to, not money, but Federal Reserve notes. So I just wanted to, am I on track there also with that information?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. As a matter of fact, I think most people don't realize. Let's just pick a traffic court, for instance.
Yes.
Just as just as an example, a whole idea that you are you are allowing the jurisdiction of a traffic court to be applied to you by the things that you do to allow that to happen. And when you are able to, declare your rights, your sovereign rights as even a citizen, then some of those things are not able to even touch you. And I know you've talked about this much in the past, and I just want to use that as an example that we all potentially during our lifetimes, we subject ourselves to jurisdictions that we don't necessarily have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And the scary thing about it is like I've pressed this issue with police officers. I've told them, hey, I don't fall into your jurisdiction. I'm not even a citizen, but they arrest me anyway. They handcuff me. They take me to jail. They'll put me in a box and freeze me out for like days at a time, not allowing me to speak to anybody until I consent to their jurisdiction over me, to letting me use my picture and fingerprints, or letting them use my biometrics against me. And they use strong arm, like assault and battery tactics. I mean, and physical punishment. I was chained to a chair one time. I couldn't sleep for days or eat because of what they were feeding. And also they had taken my clothes, and I was in the cement box with the temperature dropped down to like 65 degrees because I wouldn't give them my picture and fingerprints. And even though I enforced my fifth, I said I wanted to put into play there that, hey, I'm, enforcing my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent here. I don't have to testify against myself by identifying myself. And I wasn't doing anything. I was at the mall. I just wouldn't give them my identification. They still arrested me and held me. So even when you are in the right, that's the thing. And I'm hoping some police officers or policy enforcers are listening to this. I hope, or someone that's young and might think about being a police officer, just realize that You're not serving and protecting the people anymore. It's really about protecting your identity because you're hiding behind a badge, like a fake name. And now, Michael, tell me if I'm wrong on this. And I called the sheriff's office, the head of the sheriff's office here in Brevard County, where I live in Florida, and I called the head of the FBI. And I asked them where these special agents and where these police officers like Sergeant Smith get their titles, because I wanted to know if these agents and these officers are writing citations or contracts under names that are not registered with the Secretary of State of their state, then they're committing fraud. And I called the headquarters of the police station and the FBI, and I said, where do they get these titles? Is the Secretary of State issuing a legal identity to this individual, calling them Special Agent Johnson or Sergeant Smith of the police station? Is that where they're getting these titles? And they told me no, that these are just some made up title given to them by their office. It's not even registered with the Secretary of State to be writing citations. Yet this whole magistrate level of law of court activity, so-called court activity, is all about contracts and money and getting money from the pocket of the citizen into the court, into the pocket of these businesses called courthouses. And so you got these people out there posing as police officers, operating under a fake identity, extorting at gunpoint money from people and putting them under duress and putting them in fear. And these cops are running around, with their lights on and sirens on, and they're pulling people out of their car when they just, refuse to give their driver's license, or they don't, they say that they don't fall under their jurisdiction. But yet it's some company saying that they're better than living souls. And I just want to see, am I on the right track there? Is this true? I mean, I verified this. This is fraud that's going on.
Well, and, that's what we need to now, if we can, get into the details of, to show people what they can do to kind of resolve and or come up with a solution of how they are going to navigate through this process that seemingly wants to get jurisdiction over all of us and doesn't necessarily have that jurisdiction. So I would really like you to help start sharing, if you could, your ideas of how we can deal with all of this.
All right, that's fine. And you know what? There's a couple. The good thing about this is that there's like a few different ways to handle this. You can go the track where you decide to remove yourself from the jurisdiction of the state by doing the paperwork for it, by basically removing yourself as a citizen and becoming a national. And I can talk about that. And then there's also the process when you go into, if you do decide to remain a citizen and decide to challenge it in a straightforward way instead of removing yourself from jurisdiction, doing the legal paperwork, you can instead go in and challenge the court's jurisdiction by realizing this. And now this is something that I want you to, listen to, Michael, and just tell me if you think I'm on the right track here too, because this is part of the solution. There's two parts. There's several parts to this overall solution. One of the things I'm wanting to do here that I am doing is working on ending poverty and war. And ending poverty is going to be a byproduct of us removing ourselves from the jurisdiction of the state, or by us being able to have our value accepted, and by the law differentiating between us and our birth certificate. So, for instance, when you go into a courtroom, like let's say for a citation, you, the human being, you, the living soul, you're just there as someone who's going to take responsibility for a bond, a commercial piece of paper called your birth certificate. When you're born, everybody gets a birth certificate, and that's actually a commercial bond. So when you go into the courtroom and the judge says, ask me, am I Ronald Farnham? I'm going to say, I'm here, on a limited basis for a special visitation on behalf of the defendant, which is right here. And I hold up the birth certificate, with it's all capital letters on there, and then I go on to present the facts that, listen, I know that this is the